Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to a brand new chapter in this course. So in this video, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to set up some trigger volumes and some objectives. So basically, in certain areas of the game, the player will walk into an invisible zone where text will be shown on screen that gives instructions or tips or some sort of objective, right? And similarly, we're going to build something very similar for music as well. So right before certain sequences in the game, for example, combat sequences or certain magical areas, we're gonna change the music as well to set the tone for what's coming. All right, so that's what we're gonna do in this video. In the next video, we'll be setting up the puzzle mechanics. So let's jump into it. All right, guys, so what we're gonna accomplish by the end of this video is we're gonna have certain areas like trigger areas where the player, when the player walks into that trigger area, we're gonna show some sort of objective text, maybe I would say over here in the center, I guess, center of the screen. We're going to display some text that says, do this particular thing, press space to jump, or press G to roll, or something like that. And then we can also add instructions to certain areas, such as the puzzle, for sort of the indicator that says, hey, you got to solve this to basically acquire the whatever it is. What was that? The necklace. Yep. I forgot what it was that the player was trying to get. So we can add some sort of objectives and instructions all throughout the game. And with the same kind of script, we are also going to add the functionality to play certain audio cues in certain areas. For example, this right here is the grand battle, right? So you got like 3 enemies or 4 enemies over here that you're going to fight. So pretty much when you enter this area, for example, we're going to start playing a battle music. And same thing for the puzzle area, we're going to play a different type of audio cue, some sort of audio that basically indicates you walked into a certain chapter in the game, right? So basically that's what we'll be doing with this chapter of this course. So I'm going to get started by creating a trigger area. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new cube. So go to this plus 3D object cube. All right, so I'm gonna make it big enough for the player to hit, and basically we're gonna guarantee that the player always hits this by placing it in places, areas of the map that are very strategic. For example, if you have sort of a chokehold kind of I don't know what these kind of places are called, maybe like a choke point. I think they're called choke points. Sorry, not chokehold. These kind of points in a map are called choke points, where basically you know that the player has to go through this area to proceed to the next part of the map, right? So these kind of areas are perfect for some sort of trigger, because you know that the player can't skip this, right? Player can't go around it. Now for areas such as this, you can't guarantee that the player is gonna hit this trigger, because the player could be walking around here, player could be walking around here, player could basically skip this, right? So we don't want that. So we're gonna place a trigger over here, or we can easily place a trigger over here as well. So I think for starters, we'll put our first trigger over here, so you know that the player is gonna hit it, because when you start the game, that's literally where you're standing, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make this a bit big enough so that the player can hit it. Then I'm also going to turn off the mesh renderer. Then look at this. This is basically the trigger area, and I'm going to make this a trigger. That's really important. And then I'm going to call this text trigger volume. Okay. And then what we basically need is some sort of script that holds some sort of text. All right. That being said, when you walk into that trigger area, that text will be displayed on screen. Right? Which means we need some sort of reusable text on the canvas, right? So find your canvas in your hierarchy and then basically open that up. And if you guys have set up the game the same way that I have, you should also have a scene separately for UI stuff. So open that up and then right click your canvas, go to UI, and then click on Text Mesh Pro. Right? With that, I'm just going to call this objective text. Awesome. So I'm going to move this over to the bottom, all right? And then also anchor this at the bottom as well. So I'm assuming you guys have gone through the UI lessons and really understood how this anchoring and everything works. With that, I'm just going to also scale this up a bit, all right? And I'm going to add some text options here, text styling options. I'm going to center this, center vertically as well. And then I'm going to move it like this. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is, guys, I'm going to add a custom font for this, because a custom font will always look really good in your game than having the normal standard font here. So I'm going to go to my assets folder, right click, create folder. I'm going to call that fonts. Okay. Inside of that, I'm going to basically bring in the font that I've included with this lesson. So feel free to download the same font, guys. It's for educational purposes, but you can always get new fonts from fonts.google.com. That's where I get my fonts. And simply just drag and drop .ttf files into your fonts folder. All right, so I've brought in my new font. The link is down below, guys, if you want to download the same font. I've brought in the Cormorant Garamond regular font here because it kind of looks very adventurous, and feel free to bring in any other font as well, so that's completely up to you. That being said, guys, we can't just use this font immediately, like instantly in your game. We got to convert this into a TextMesh Pro typed typeface. All right, TextMesh Pro typed font. So how do we do that? Just click your font here, simply go over to Window, TextMesh Pro, and then click Font Asset Creator. All right, when you tap that, basically that's going to open up a new window like this. All right, so it's going to ask you what the source font file is. Simply drag and drop this font here, or use this little dot to find it, and you don't have to do anything else. Just click on Generate Font Alias. Sorry about that, just opened up my Visual Studio for some reason. After that, click on Save, and then save it in the same fonts folder. That's fine. Just click Save, and that should give you a little F icon here. You should get a new font file here. Basically this, it just keeps opening up my Visual Studio for some reason. This is compatible with your TextMesh Pro component. So open up your text objective text here, which is a TextMesh Pro component. And then over here, there is something called Font Asset. So Liberation Sans is the, the default font for TextMesh Pro. Just drag in your Cormorant here, which is this font, and immediately you can see that font change, which looks really nice. Awesome. I'm just gonna increase the font size just a bit, right? I might actually put the font here simply because I don't want it to be sort of intersecting with these font here. So I just want to make this big enough and put it at the top. So I'm gonna change my anchoring as well to top center, right? Other than that, I might actually change these fonts as well just to match everything. So just click on Ammo Text, drag the same font. That looks good. Same thing for this, drag and drop. Awesome, that looks nice. That looks pretty good. Well aligned, everything is perfect. We are good to go. That being said, guys, let's start coding our objective text. I'm just gonna click this and delete this text because we don't want anything there. Simply because we want our trigger volume to be the guy who shows whatever text is necessary. All right. So what we're going to go do next is go to scripts folder, right click, create a new C# script called objective text trigger. Okay. With that, I'll let it compile. Every time I do that, for some reason, my Visual Studio just automatically opens, which is kind of annoying, but yeah, it is what it is. I've got this script open here, guys. So what we're gonna do is simply use a code which I've written before. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm just gonna copy and paste this. All right, guys, I brought in my code here. I'm just gonna explain how this works. I've also included the script down below. It's very straightforward. You guys should be aware of these concepts by now, but I'm gonna walk through it. So the first thing we have here is a serialized field. You can even have this as public if you want to, but serialized field is a better way of doing Unity references. So it's pretty much like saying public, but the difference is it's a private field here, but you only allow Unity to access it. All right. So TextMesh Pro UGUI is the component, and that's the objective text we're going to drag and drop. Other than that, we have a message. This is the message that we're going to display. This is the display time, how long we're going to show the text. And when the game starts, we check if the objective text is not equal null. If it's not equal null, we basically deactivate it, we hide it, right? Because we want to wait until the player walks into the trigger. And this is the part that does that. On trigger enter, we check if the thing that walked into this trigger is the player by checking the tag. And then we simply call this method called display objective text. In here, guys, what we're going to do is if the objective text is not equal null, we just do that because we want null safety so that it doesn't crash the game. And then we say objective text, which is our text mesh pro dot text, the message that we have coded here, which is in Unity. And then we simply activate this text, and then we start a coroutine for a delay, right? So you guys are already familiar with coroutines. What we're doing over here is we wait for the display time, yield return, you wait for seconds, and then we hide it again. It's that straightforward. Now let's test it out, guys. Feel free to use the same script. So simply what I'm going to do in now is just go to my text trigger volume, let it compile. After it's done compiling, just click your volume here, go to add component and search for objective text trigger. All right, so what we got to do, guys, is simply drag in your objective text over here, and then display time will be 3. I'll simply say use WASD keys to move. All right, then hit save. Let's see if this works. Awesome, it immediately works, guys. That looks great, and it hides. That's fantastic. I'm just gonna make this 5 seconds long, and then I'm also gonna just make sure this objective text doesn't go into 2 lines. I don't want it to go to 2 lines. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drag this a little bit to the left, drag it to the right, the same margins on the right, and we run again. That looks great. Now I know that like we can move around. That looks great. Fantastic. All right. So another thing you guys can do is obviously when you pick this up, you can display some sort of text that says you picked it up. Cool. That's basically our objective volumes, guys. It's that straightforward. What we're gonna do next is simply duplicating this. We can actually prefab this as well, guys. The better thing to do would be to prefab this volume so you can easily drag and drop. But whenever you do that, just make sure that you always drag in your objective text, right? Or else it's not going to work. This text here, the objective text, as you can see, when you prefab it, we lose that reference simply because it's not in the game yet. But when you drag a new one in, you just got to make sure that you drag in your objective text as well. All right. So I'm going to drag a new one in here, and I'm going to place it at another choke point so the player can't miss it. And I'm going to place it over here. I'm going to make it big enough so that the player can't miss it. We'll always go through it, right? See how it's kind of intersecting with the structure here, so that you know that player is definitely going to go through this, right? And then you also want it to be a bit high so that the player can't jump over it. This is how you smartly really align these things. And the next thing you do is drag in your objective text as well, which is kind of annoying. I would love for it to be automatically found. That's something we can do as well. But for now, I'm okay with this. This text for this volume is going to be press G. Press G to roll. Okay, let's see if this works, guys. So this shows up, great. Now let's go to this one. And when you go across this, it says nice. Now I can just try that out. See how cool that is? That is pretty good. All right, now the other thing is I need a tutorial for right clicking as well. So ideally we should have another one, and it should be around 3 seconds long. And ideally, actually, now that I think about it, this should be the shooting. This should be the shooting instruction, simply because when you cross this border, an enemy is going to detect you. So you kind of want the player to get ready for action. So what I would do is actually I would create actually a duplicate of this. Let's click on this guy. This is this objective, but where's the other one? It's over here. So I'm going to duplicate this, move it over here, kind of make it a choke point as well. So I'm just going to drag that over here so that the player can't miss it. And this instruction will be press G to roll, but this instruction will be, where is that? It's at the top. This instruction will be right click to aim, left click to shoot, right? And then I'm gonna make it 5 seconds. With that, guys, they should have a proper idea of what to do during this combat sequence. So when I go through this, now it's gonna say press G to roll, and I can do that. And as soon as you go through this, right click, so there you go, and then press left to shoot. Awesome. See, now player is given proper instructions to actually beat the game. Now I've got a little problem in my game where I've kind of messed up the ground layer, so this is why the player is doing this. Don't worry about it. We can definitely get that fixed. So I don't think it's happening in your game, guys. I actually did a mistake, kind of affected my own player's mechanic because I was kind of racing and lowering the terrain. But I'll look into that. But other than that, guys, that's basically your instruction scenes, instruction volumes. Essentially what we're going to do next is pretty much the same thing but for audio, right? So the next thing is when you get into a combat sequence, not this combat sequence but this one over here, I want it to go into a very action-packed soundtrack. So what I'm going to do is a bit of a hack, right? So I'm going to drag in the same text volume here. Okay, I'm going to show you guys a little something. I'm going to make it bigger, just like we did earlier. Make it a bit of a unmissable point. All right, so when they go through this, basically, now I'm going to remove this component. Okay, I'm going to remove it. And the other thing I'm going to do is, guys, I'm going to right-click this, prefab, unpack. Now, when you do that, guys, what we're doing is essentially we are breaking the reference to our prefab. And we have the ability to create another type of volume without having to create the 3D model again, the cube again. I'm just gonna say music trigger volume. All right, trigger volume. So volume usually refers to some sort of area that you can walk into. Don't confuse that with the music volume. All right, awesome. So that's another thing. Now what I'm gonna do is just go to scripts, guys, and I'm gonna create a new C# script called music trigger. Okay, just keep it simple, music trigger, and I'm gonna go to my music trigger volume, and I'm gonna drag in my music trigger script to it. And awesome, now I'm gonna create a new prefab from my music trigger. See what I did there? So basically we duplicated the text volume into our scene, we unpacked it, we broke the reference to the prefab basically, and then we created a new script attached to it, and then created a new prefab out of the music trigger volume. All right, rewatch that if you missed that. That being said, now what we're gonna do in the music trigger, guys, is basically when the player walks into this, we are gonna play a different soundtrack. So we're gonna get access to our music audio source. All right, so I have one over here called music, right? It's simply an audio source. So if you don't have one already, guys, go to plus audio source, and that's simply it. It's just a speaker. All right, and I'll renamed it as music, and I have a default audio music that's running. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to change this track to combat music when the player walks into that zone. All right, that's basically what we're going to do now in the script. All right, guys, here's the music trigger script, and I've included this down below as well. So it works the same way as our objective text trigger. All right, couple of differences. Let's walk through this. First thing is, guys, I've got a reference to the audio source, which is my music audio source. Very straightforward. Second thing is the audio clip we want to play, the new clip. All right. Third thing is, now something like a audio cue should only happen once, right? So, or else what happens is every time the player walks through that area, it's going to trigger again. Now, this applies to objective text as well. If you don't want this to trigger every time the player goes through that area, you can apply the same logic here. Simply, it's just a boolean that says has played. And it says false by default because we haven't played it yet. But when the player walks into this area and it hasn't been played before, we play the music, right? And then when we play the music, we just simply say has played equals true. And you guys already know what this does, right? Just changes the audio clip and plays it. It's that simple, guys. So hit save and go back here, let it compile. All right. So after that, you should have an audio source here and an audio clip. Very straightforward. What I'm going to do is, guys, I'm going to drag in my music audio source, and the audio clip I want is an action audio file that I have actually picked out already. I've also included the link to this game music as a pack below as well. So I really like this track. I don't know if that's too loud for you guys, but that's basically the sound clip that I'm gonna play there. So what we're gonna do now is go over to the music trigger and then simply drag this guy over here. All right. that's that. And then what I might actually do is just a volume control here, because I feel like certain audio clips will be pretty loud, right? So what I'm gonna do is just copy this bit, put it here. All right, just like having it in the same line. Just simply say private float volume. All right, so this is the volume that we're gonna play this sound clip in. So before we play, we simply say audio source, the volume equals volume. So we played in a different volume from the original music source, right? So for this, I might just simply do, what's my default? Let's have a look at what my default volume is. My default volume right now is 0.5. So I think this is a pretty loud track, so I might actually do 0.3 for this, 0.3, and we're gonna test it out. But I don't want to go through the same process again, going through all of this area. So what I'm gonna do is, guys, I'm going to move the player over here. Okay, so let's move the player over here so I don't have to play through again. So that's another trick that you guys can do. You guys can skip all of this stuff and just spawn here, then basically kill off the guy here. So there's a guy here, so we're gonna have to fight him first. All right, some guy shooting me. All right, so there's something wrong with this guy right now, and that's simply because we kind of skipped all of those. So that's simply why. So don't worry about it. Stuff like that happens when you don't go through the natural progression of the game and kind of skip it. So I'm not really worried about it. All right, let's get into the combat area now. Need some bullets. There you go. I can already hear it. I want some bullets. Awesome. Where's this guy? Nice. I wish I could just punch. I don't have that feature right now. Awesome. There we go. That's awesome, guys. Do you hear the music? It's pretty good. Looks good, feels good, plays good. That's it, guys. So with that, guys, I'm gonna apply the same thing over here as well. So when we cross this area, obviously the combat is complete. I'm gonna pretty much add another trigger volume there to stop that music and go back to the normal one. So that's pretty straightforward. What I'm going to do is just duplicate it and move that over here so that the new audio starts playing. But I might actually play that over here because we anyway have to play a magical soundtrack over here, because this is the first time the player is going to see this area. So this has to be a bit magical, mystical, magical kind of synonyms for that word. But basically, yeah, when you cross this border, we're gonna play a different sound clip. All right, so for that, I might switch this back to 0.5, and then the sound clip for that, I've already picked it out as well, is gonna be, now I've had one picked out, this one. Okay, so same thing. I'm gonna move the player over here because we anyway have to. With the next lesson, we're gonna set up the puzzle mechanics, so I don't want to go through this battle sequence all over again. So I'm just gonna move the player over here and hope to God that nothing breaks. That usually happens, guys. Things break when you skip the natural progression of the game and kind of skip the player. So don't worry about it if that ever happens. But there we go. So this is good. Let's play it. Now, when I go through this area. There we go. Audio changed. Feels really nice. That looks really good. You guys hear that music? That's awesome. You've got this puzzle here that you're gonna solve in the next chapter, guys.